I'd like to suggest that we begin with 2 minutes of a contemplative practice that I like to do, particularly because you can do it as part of your formal contemplative practice every day when you sit down for short or long periods of time. But I particularly like it because it's a practice that you can practice on a line in a supermarket or when the freeway is, in your estimate, too crowded and you're going to be late for whatever you think is important, or when you're worried about an upcoming appointment that you have to show up for right now. It's I'm the present, I'm the useful practice. So this is a practice. It's being aware of one's body. I do it with awareness of breath coming in and out. Of course, I can sometimes do it by just saying the 2 phrases to myself. And here are the 2 phrases. The 2 phrases that I say are, may I meet this moment fully. May I meet it as a friend. May I meet this moment fully. May I meet it as a friend. So we'll do it for a little bit. They're a little bit different, each one, so really pay attention. It changes. What I do is I say, may I meet this moment fully, and I breathe in and out, and then I take a whole breath in and out without the next sentence, just meeting the moment fully. And then may I meet it as a friend, in and out, and then another whole breath. So 4 breaths, 2 phrases, or any other way you want to do it. The important thing is meeting the moment fully and as a friend. So we'll do that for a minute or 2. And when you're ready, open your eyes. Did you feel a little different with each phrase? Yes? Yes. I feel a little different with each phrase. I think they represent both aspects of what I imagine mindfulness meditation is meant to do for us. My definition of mindfulness meditation is being alert moment to moment for what's happening outside, around me that I notice, what's happening in me that I notice, as well as what's my response, my emotional response. Uh-oh, this is worrisome, or, oh, good, this is fine, or what is happening? The emotional response, the valence, the feeling tone, the Buddha would call it, that comes with each moment of experience. What's happening? What's my automatic response to it? And that's half of the definition of mindfulness. Sometimes say mindfulness is living in the moment. It's not just living in the moment. The second half of the definition is being alert in the moment and balanced, poised in order to be able to respond to that moment in a way that does not create suffering for yourself or for other people. It's really, Nyanaponika called it, so the clear comprehension of purpose in each moment. Now I know what's happening. This is what I should do. Sometimes what I should do is nothing, or wait quietly, or figure out what I should do. But it's built into this moment of awareness, the intention to habituate the mind to respond rather than to react, or to, instead of contesting, come to the moment with compassion or kindness. I love the idea of meeting each moment like a friend. Those of you who have experience practicing in the Vipassana tradition probably recognize that we talk a lot about mindfulness, knowing what's happening, what's going on, and that we talk about loving kindness practice as bringing an attitude of kindness or friendliness to each moment as it arrives. I think that particular rubric, may I meet this moment fully, may I wake up in it, may I meet it as a friend, may I meet it as a friend ready to respond with compassion. I think it works very well for me, so I recommend it to you. I thought I would tell you to begin with that what I really want to talk about is integrity, morality, as really the foundation to practice and the foundation to wisdom. And when I began to practice 40-some years ago, the emphasis was not on integrity. The emphasis was on meditation. As a matter of fact, the idea of integrity and morality was introduced within the concept of it's good to do these kinds of good behaviors, precepts of behavior, because if you don't do them, you'll feel guilt and confusion and remorse, and you won't be able to meditate well. So the point was that you should meditate well, not become a person of integrity necessarily. I think that actually it turns out that we meditate well, we have insights, we realize that everyone is suffering, everyone is challenged. It's heartbreaking to realizing it, and we get transformed to kindness and compassion, and we have really a shining integrity at that point. So at some point, I began to think maybe we could skip over the whole practice of meditation and just go from where we wanted to be, from here to there, by behaving as if we already saw how deeply embedded in the fabric of life is challenge and suffering and loss for everyone. But if I go back to the beginning, in 1977, which is when I started, the integrity was not a major piece of the teachings. But let's say 20 years later or so, maybe 20-some years ago, my husband said one day over breakfast, in the way of people who've been together for so many years, they ran out of conversation. He said, so, all these years of practicing, how have you changed? And first of all, you think, didn't you notice? But anyway, giving that away. Sometimes people they live together a long time, they don't have anything to say, they make it up. Okay, so all these years of practicing, what about you has changed? I thought about it, and I said, I became kind. And he said, you were always kind. And I said, I became kinder. And that's really the truth of it. That's the whole truth of it. I did become kinder. I became more thoughtful. I became more aware faster of when I've hurt somebody, of when I've said something that put somebody off or caused somebody pain, or when I think thoughts about myself. You did that poorly, so I'm more aware of that and more ready to say you did the best you could. I have been really seduced to an awareness of everybody's doing the best they can all the time, including me. And I'm kinder to other people, and I'm kinder to myself, and I'm happier. But I want to tell you something about how that transition happened from the beginning to the end. Had somebody said to me 40-some years ago, you ought to take up meditation so you'll become kind, I would have said, that's not my problem. I'm pretty good. I'm making it through this life. I had a nice life. I am married to the same person for 64 years. Our adult children are all in good health. I really was aware of how fortunate I was in this life. And the more aware of how fortunate I was, and the more aware of how calamity had not yet struck me in a particular way, the more aware I was of the fact that I would need to deal with more and more calamity and shock and loss in my life. There were in my 30s some incidents that woke me up. I thought about it later, and I thought, maybe this was like the stories of the Buddha, the fanciful stories about the Buddha not being aware of old age, sickness, and death until he was in his late 20s. I take that as a metaphor for everyone's awakening to the kind of existential angst that's embedded in life. If you look around, you think, whoa, there is no way out but forward, and there is nothing that can prevent me from having difficulties along the way. In my 30s, a woman down the street from me had a child that was wonderful, beautiful infant, who died at 3 weeks of sudden infant death. And I couldn't imagine how I would deal with that. I remember that as a traumatic episode. A car rode up on a sidewalk on the street where I live and killed 2 little girls in the 1st and 2nd grade who were sisters. And the 2nd grader was in my daughter's class. And I could not imagine what that mother felt like or what that family felt like. And in the mornings when my children would go to school, I would say, I'll see you later. And I would ring shallow in my mind. And I really was terrified by the idea of everything is fine, but it isn't going to be. And for really the first serious time in my life, I began to think about what can I do? How do you get out of this? And when people started in the 70s to be doing this meditation and that meditation, I actually wasn't sure of how meditation would help my nervous worrying or my ongoing catastrophic imagination. It was what everybody was doing, and they said it was good for them. And I thought, well, I might as well, although I couldn't really see how it would work to do that. In fact, I have become much more at ease in my life and not any less aware of the fact that anybody can be stricken with a loss at any time, and not any less cherishing of every day that I'm alive and have my family and the people who are dear to me. I am more aware of the fact that everybody is in exactly the same boat as I am. Everybody loves their people. Everybody is walking around with the same existential dread that they either know about or are fending off by keeping their mind occupied with other stuff. And that the only answer to it all is kindness all around, being kind to myself and to everybody I know, to not carrying any grudges with me as I go along in life. When early on I learned the first line of a loving kindness chant, which is, "May I be free of enmity and danger." And when I first heard it, I thought it meant, may I be free of having people coming after me, enmity on the part of other people coming after me. And after a while, I began to realize that it really meant, may I be free of enmity. That doesn't mean that I don't get mad when somebody says something or does something. I behave pretty well because I'm a well-behaved person, and I'm fairly mild-mannered, but I come from mild-mannered people, so that wasn't a big deal. But I get angry inside. What I want to be able to do is notice the anger and not make a story about it, and not make enemies out of the people who, in the company of with anger arises. I figure out better ways to deal with that. I really have been thinking about, maybe that's my favorite line, may I be free of enmity and the danger of becoming confused by enmity. I love the times that I have seen His Holiness the Dalai Lama it happened certainly more than once, twice. I can remember 3 instances. People are always asking him, do you ever get angry? And he says, of course. He's got that little laugh, And then he says, somebody does something, anger arises, but it doesn't stay there. And you get a very clear picture of the fact that he doesn't do nothing about it. He says about it, or he takes care of it, or he does something. What he doesn't do is make it a grudge and carry it around in his mind and decrease the real estate of his heart and its ability to love all beings with a completely open heart. When people are with him, they feel like they're in a room with a person whose heart is trained to kindness, not because he's arm wrestled it to the ground, but because he deeply sees the challenges and the suffering that's embedded in the human condition. So I didn't know how it was going to work when I started, but I got less frightened, I think, because I got to see that I was worried about things might happen. Things will happen. Things do happen. And they happen to everybody. And that's what this life is about. And to be able to say the best way we do it and get through it is holding hands with each other and being friends to each other and taking care of each other. That kindness and connection is what really keeps us going. I remember going on retreat in the very beginning and discovering that the first thing on retreats is people were asked to take formal precepts. And I still do that with people. Although in the beginning, I remember I was very put off by having the person leading the retreat saying, now we're going to take these precepts of correct behavior, and mentioning about not harming living beings, not by taking things that they don't offer, not by words, not by sexuality, not taking any intoxicants that would cloud the mind. And I thought to myself, who doesn't do this? We all already do that. I felt sort of really put down, like this is 7-year-old ethics training, not for grown-ups. So I didn't like telling people to do it. On the other hand, on the morning after 9/11, 9/11 was a Tuesday. On Wednesday morning, the Wednesday morning class that I've had for 25 years at Spirit Rock was meeting, and I was very glad for it because hundreds of people came because they wanted to sit quiet somewhere. And I thought, what can I do with these people? And the first thing we did was we recited precepts, refuges and precepts. And it was so soothing to sit in a room with a lot of people after a heinous calamity the day before and hear a lot of other people say along with me, I vow not to harm living beings. I vow not to harm them in this way or this way or this way or this way or any way, and have the sense that all of these people and a world full of people wish, like I do, for people not to suffer. It's very soothing to do that. So I have had a more open mind. I'm very careful anyway when I say to people, we're going to take these precepts. I say, of course, you live this way, but we do them anyway because this is the formal thing to do. And it's lovely to say, I'm training my mind to think about other people. I really, I think I was bewildered by the instruction. It was the 70s, so commandments and rules were not what was on everybody's mind. Really was pushing the edge, which was what was on everybody's mind. But I think it was, I think about it now as a soothing thing in the middle of a really distraught world. I also heard early on about the training of Rahula. Rahula was the Buddha's son, born before he left his life as a nobly born son. There's an important sermon called Instructions to Rahula, which when you read it for the first time, it reads like this. The Buddha said, before you do anything, Rahula, in word, thought, or deed, you should reflect, is what I'm about to do for my benefit as well as for this other person's benefit? And if it is, you can continue to do whatever you were going to say or do. But if it isn't, then you don't do it. And also in the middle of doing something, Rahula, you should reflect, is what I am doing for this person's benefit and for mine? And if it is, you can continue. And if it isn't, stop, back up. And after you did something, Rahula, you should reflect, was what I just did for this person's benefit and my benefit or not? And if it wasn't, you make amends, you take it back, you fix it up, you ask forgiveness. And I remember thinking at the time, and many people have asked me since that time, they say you have to live a very staccato life for that. But before every single thing you have to think, and in the middle of the thing you have to think, and after the thing you have to think. So it becomes clear to me that it's not a literal, otherwise it'd be very staccato living and you'd hardly say anything. But really I think what it means is when your mind is so fully tuned, like your GPS, to true north or wherever it is that you want to go, that the minute that you swerve off it, your mind tells you, you don't really want to do this, sweetheart. This is what you just said, half a sentence. Take it back. That wasn't good. You know how your GPS, the minute you're turning the corner and it's too soon, they say recalculating. And then if you go around the whole block and you come around again and you're coming around for another pass and the GPS gods don't know that the street is all torn up and you have to go forward, tells you again to make a right, not to make a right turn, but you do. And it says recalculating again. And it doesn't say it in a bad tone of voice. It says it in a good tone of voice, but it says it resolutely that you cannot turn that way. I think that's what happens. You know, what I know for sure is that when I sit to meditate or take a walk quietly around my block as a meditation, when I stop forward motion to have some contemplative moments, you could think about it too in your own contemplative moments. What happens pretty much right away is I remember what I didn't do that I meant to do. You forgot to call back so-and-so. And when so-and-so called you, they really wanted to talk a little more, but you really were trying to get off the phone a little bit too fast. You heard that they needed another few sentences and you didn't do it. It's a spontaneous moral inventory. Anybody ever notice that? Anybody with a meditation practice ever notice that you sit down a few minutes and your inventories in your inbox suddenly starts to fill up with what you didn't do? And it's really true. You go on retreats. I go on retreat and I do not read or write, and I do all the proper behaviors of just be in the moment. But I also have a notebook next to my bench where I sit. And because I have to keep track, if you didn't call so-and-so and you didn't do this one, and you didn't talk kindly enough to this one, and this one you have forgotten about, because the mind does its own moral inventory spontaneously as it settles itself down. And you know what? I love that. Every once in a while, it's doing too much of an inventory. I say, stop, come back tomorrow. This is demoralizing me. But, and it's a 1 week retreat. I can't run home now and do this. But I am so reassured because I think it happens. Does it happen to you? Yes. I am very reassured that human beings have built in apparatus for moral inventory. I don't think it necessarily grows up that way. If you have loving parents and they behave in a way that's morally, and they suggest to you really what are valuable ways in which to live, then your own moral inventory machine will take over and do it for you. But I have such a good feeling. I am very worried about the future of the planet, and I am very worried about what's happening. But I am sure that people don't mean to do it, that it's a mistake, that people don't get up in the morning and say, okay, how can I mess things up today and ruin the planet and get rid of so-and-so? I don't want to have enmity. I don't. There are lots of people in the world that I feel very upset with what they're doing, and I wish they weren't doing it. And I am doing my best to not have them do any more of it than we can deal with. But I don't want to have hatred in my mind. It's very confusing. I think you can have a clear purpose and a clear understanding of what you disagree with without having enmity in your mind. And enmity isn't good for me. It confuses me. I see the amount of pain that the whole planet is in. I think everybody's got to wake up. I have this, I'm all right on the time, right? I don't. Okay. I want to make sure I say whatever is really important to me. I'm saying it. That's okay. I really am sure that of that particular great value of learning the precepts, saying the precepts. If you're in the all-day workshop with me tomorrow, we'll do a meditation on the precepts and work with that, because I think it's a very valuable thing. And it makes me feel good to think that I'm a part of a species that has a moral inventory machine. That's good. Some don't. And I'm part of a species that has the ability to not do something that I feel like doing. I don't have to do it. That we have the restraint to feel like telling somebody off and not doing it. If we did it, we would make a mess. What if we told our boss what we think of her? Or we told our partners everything that we think about them, the worst? That'd be very hard. Well, I already told you, I'm in a marriage 64 years. You don't say everything. Wanted to tell you that part of the evolution of my understanding, not that it's about meditation, it's about integrity, for which meditation is very valuable, that one of the formative things that happened in my practice career over the last 40 years, in the beginning, I had a job, my service job every day on a certain retreat was to be folding towels in the anteroom to the lunchroom in which the teachers were teaching. So I could listen, I could eavesdrop on my teachers and say what they were saying. And I admired them all. I still do now. They're my friends and colleagues. And I remember they were talking about what motivated them in their practice to continue practicing with fervor. And I remember Joseph Goldstein, who is my teacher and my colleague and my friend. I remember him saying, I continue to practice because I want to have a deeper understanding of suffering. And I thought, uh-oh, I came on this whole retreat business because I don't want to be thinking about suffering so much. That was a very astounding thing. Now I would say my continuing to practice is to stay tuned for the awareness of suffering in the world, to see it everywhere that I can see it, because it is threaded into every moment. I think Bob was talking about, Professor Thurman was talking about this earlier today when he said that if you really look at things, if you look at life, I think it's continually getting used to being disappointed because things don't last. There's one continual getting used to doing without. I think about the fact that when we're young, my granddaughter was frightened to go from preschool to kindergarten because she said, I won't know where to put my lunchbox and I won't know where to hang my coat yet. And she'd already done successfully 3 years of preschool, but then you have to worry about kindergarten. Then you have to worry about long division. Then you have to worry about puberty. Then you have to worry about what to do with your sexuality. Then you have to think about, what am I going to do to make a living? Am I going to spend my life in a partnership, or what am I going to do, and how am I going to affect it? And do I want to make children or not children, or raise children, or what do I want to do? And is it working for me to work and sustain myself? And now I have to deal with a divorce, and now it's an empty nest all of a sudden. And all of a sudden, okay, empty nest, now I have a life, okay. All right, arthritis, that menopause. I didn't have this before. We're always having something that we didn't just have before and get used to. Okay, figure out how to deal with that. Now that's not here anymore. Figure it out now, getting older. It's really interesting. All of a sudden, you forget a word in the middle of a sentence, or you can't remember where the sentence started, and your friends are maybe ahead of you on that, so you think, oh, look, that's down the line for me. How to be able to say, this is a very wonderful teaching line. One of my teachers who I much admired, Ajahn Sumedho, had a gesture, I think. This is a very interesting learning story. I was studying with him. A bunch of teachers were doing a retreat with him, and he was talking about dealing with unpleasant feelings in his mind about problems in his monastery. And he said, well, sometimes I worry about it. My mind is full of worry, and I don't know what to do. And then I think to myself, it's like this. That's what happens in monasteries. He said, when I say to myself, it's like this, I feel better, and I'm all right. So I taught that all over the world for a year. Whenever I was teaching, this wonderful gesture. I felt like those stories about someone held up a lotus, or the Buddha held up a lotus and somebody knew what that meant. I was telling it all over the place, and Ajahn Sumedho said, when you're able to say about your situation, it's like this, then you're free, really. And so then I met Ajahn Sumedho again at another conference. And I said, oh, that was so helpful to me, what you said. And you said, in essence, you have to be able to say, it's like this. And you said that, and you made that gesture. And he said, I said that? I made that gesture? So meantime, I think he said it. And I think he made that gesture. But really, that's what you have to do in life. This arthritis, this whatever it is, all of my friends have something. And to be able to say, okay, now I have this. I didn't have this before, but now I have it. It isn't what I wanted, but it's what I got. That's really the key line. It isn't what I wanted, but it's what I got. Everything, if you think back in the times in your life, even if you're young, you're not up to the menopause and the arthritis, but there are so many things in your life that you have had to deal with that they weren't what you wanted, but it's what you got. And what we count as maturity is people who meet their life fully and as a friend. I love that rubric, that may I meet this moment fully, may I meet it as a friend, because I think that it's not only for the minutes that you're stuck in traffic or for the beginning of your meditation periods, it's for the whole life. May I meet this moment fully, may I meet it as a friend, may my heart be available, which if my mind is not all confused with I have to have that, or I have to get rid of that, or what is this? My mind is not confused by greed or hatred of the confusion. then I'm meeting the world fully. And if I meet it as a friend, even if it isn't something that I'm really happy about, say, well, look at that, arthritis. Who knew? But at least it's not something else. I'll get something else, but now it's just arthritis. Okay, I'll deal with that. Because what can we do except say, this is it. Can I deal with it? If my mind is clear, I'll see what to do. One of the great things, we were in Los Angeles, in San Francisco, in the Legion of Honor museum. You can buy one of the snowballs what you get in cities of the world. You shake it and it's all snow, and then the snow falls down. You see it's an Eiffel Tower, or it's a London Bridge, or it's whatever it is. In the Legion of Honor, they sell a beautiful big ball like this. You shake it, and it's a fog bowl. Comes up a big fog, all black fog swirling. You put it down, the fog settles, and you see the tops of the Golden Gate Bridge sticking out. And I think about that so much. I teach it to new students that just sitting still and not stirring it up worse, the fog settles and you begin to see, oh, that's what's there. I have arthritis. That's what's there. My child has a sickness. That's what's there. The world is melting. What should we do? But the mind stays at least steady enough to say, I see what's happening. What can I do? What can I do next? Make sure that I didn't. At some point, I have time. I want to say this one more story because it's really interesting to me. At some point, because when I started, the emphasis, again, was not on establishing integrity and developing sila. If you look at a Buddhist textbook, it will say the Buddhist teachings are sila, samadhi, panya. They're the development of integrity, ethicality, morality, the development of the capacity of mind to discern, to concentrate, to choose. That's the middle part. And the accumulation and consolidation of wisdom, that things are like they are. Everything happens because of everything that ever happened. So there's no way to see what caused this. Everyone is responsible for everything, which really makes it much easier not to demonize this one or that one or that one. Everyone is responsible for everything. So you see that. But when I started, as I said, my interest was on the meditation, and somehow I had the idea that if I developed a really strong enough samadhi, I could do all the progress of insight, and I would have tremendous experiences and tremendous insights. And truth to tell, I actually did, and I value them very much, and I've written about them very much. And it was a time in my life when I could do that, and I loved it. And in the end, what you end up knowing is that everything is insubstantial, everything is always changing, that the cause of suffering is the inability of the mind to accommodate. It's like this, mind insisting that it be otherwise, and that everything is the cause of everything else. But you could know that by looking around in the world as well. So I value it. I teach to people. I really hope that people can do a lot of contemplative practice. But at one time in my own life, I was doing a lot of very serious contemplative practice, and I really had some very unusual energetic psychic states. And then they were very pleasant to begin with, and then they didn't stop, and they got stronger and stronger and stronger, and I began to have all kinds of neurological phenomena happening, and I wasn't comfortable in my body, and I couldn't shut it off. I felt a little bit like the Sorcerer's Apprentice. All this is going on, and I can't stop it. And I went to talk to teachers how to stop it. And someone said Chagdud Rinpoche is in town, or he's going to be in town. Chagdud's not living anymore. He knows what to do with energetic states. I made an appointment. I went to see him, and I explained what had happened. I'd done all this meditation, and now I had all this very strange energy in my body. And Chagda listened, and then he said, how much compassion practice do you do every day? So I didn't know what he meant. And I said, well, in Theravada tradition, we feel that when insight grows, wisdom develops, and compassion is the result of that. It was a totally textbook answer and did not come from any personal, totally textbook answer. And he looked at me and he said, no, really, how much compassion practice do you do every day? So I was obligated to say, what exactly do you mean, Rinpoche? And he said, how much do you go out in the street and look around and see how much people are suffering? So I thought, Then I thought maybe he thinks I was too proud of myself or this or that for my phenomenal states. But he wasn't. He said, how much compassion practice? I thought he was very kind. 6 months later, I was in Israel with my husband, and I went to visit a rather fairly renowned Rebbe in the old city that had met with Seymour's cousin, who had made the arrangement that we would go and visit him. And he was kind enough to invite us to his apartment. We came in, and the Rebbe sat at the end of a table, and my husband sat up there next to him. It was a long table where he taught classes, and I sat at the whole other end because I'm aware of the protocol of that kind of Orthodox community. I was dressed appropriately with my head covered, and they were having a conversation, men together, and talking about the cousin who had referred, and Seymour was saying something about I'm very happy that the cousin will be glad to know you're in good health. And by the way, my wife Sylvia here, pointing to me down at the end of the table, my wife Sylvia is a Buddhist teacher. I think, why are you starting with that? We're here for 10 minutes. Why are you complicating this? And Reb Scheinberger leaned forward in his chair and he said, really, I'm very interested in that. What do you teach? So I say in an English that he can understand, and partly in Yiddish, because anyway, I needed to. And I explained what was going on with me in energetic states and all of that. And he listened and he said, well, I'm not really a meditation teacher. I think really he is, but I'm not really a meditation teacher. But this is what I think. I had described my states as ecstatic states. He said, a little bit of ecstasy is good for you. He said, 2 hours of ecstasy a day. That's good. I'm thinking now, 2 hours of ecstasy a day. That sounds great to me, actually. It's not what is my normal life. 2 hours of ecstasy every day. He said, that's good. He said, the rest of the time, you should go out in the street and look around at people and see how much suffering is out there. So I like to tell those two stories together because I think it's a universal story of a universal spiritual teacher who wants to say that universally, the way to create brokenheartedness in people is to have them go out and look around in the street and see people are suffering. And it doesn't have to do with rich or poor. There are terrible things going on in the world with disparities of income and people in exile and people in the middle of war zones, the obvious kinds of ways in which people are in terrible pain. But I want to add to it that what I think about a lot of the time is the pain in all the people that I can't see it in their state because they're not impoverished and they're not under attack right now. I think if each of us in this room had a magic computer override, time is up. I'm just going to finish about the magic computer. It had a magic computer over their head saying what's troubling their mind. Everybody would have in their computer something like, I just got diagnosed with this, my wife has been diagnosed with that, my mother died last week, my son is coming home from college because he's had a nervous breakdown, I think I'm going to lose my job. Everything that's in everybody's mind, everybody's got something in their mind. If I could, how many people here, put up your hand if you think I don't see your magic computers, but you have something to be in your magic computer if you had a magic computer. Yeah, everybody's got a magic computer. And we all got up this morning, put on our shoes and socks, went out, came here, sat all day very well. If we saw that all the time, everybody here, if I picked up my face from my looking incessantly into my phone, I try not to, by the way, because particularly in a public place, because everybody else is doing it. If we looked up and said, what's in everybody's computer, we'd look at them, be brokenhearted, pray for them, and we'd feel better, and we'd feel happier, because we never feel better than when we feel in ourselves the vibrancy and the poignancy and the drama and the tingling and the connection and the liveliness of an awakened heart. Thank you very, very much.